I love Dungeons and Dragons math. Dungeons and Dragons math is all based around the 50-50 rule. And so everything comes down to a 50% chance of something happening. And what is that number going to be? This is how, as a dungeon master, I can pretty much balance anything I want by just knowing what my 50-50 rule is. So let's talk about it. So when it comes to hit, right? If you don't have a hit modifier, an AC of 11 gives you a 50-50 shot of hitting something. I like my players to have a better than average chance of something happening, so very rarely do I ever give them a 50-50. What I want to see is a 75%, 25%, right? So if a player comes in and they have an average to hit of 2 plus 2, well, shoot, every 2 that they add only gives them a roughly 10% increase. So if the AC is 11 and they have a plus 2 to hit, now that's 60-40. So that really means they need an AC of 9 if I want to give them a 70-40% chance to hit. That's why level 1 sucks so much. It's not because you're squishy, it's because you can't hit shit. In fact, most of the time, you have less than a 50-50 chance of actually hitting something because you have a plus 2 to hit. Most things have a 12 to 13 AC, which immediately puts them in the 50-50 or 65-45 chance to hit. And so knowing how your plus to hit swings things allows you to calculate very quickly a 50-50. And so if someone has a +4 to their dex roll and the DC is 15, they have a 50-50 chance. What is the number where an 11 becomes the 50-50 rule? Because if you roll 1 through 10, you fail. If you roll 11 through 20, you succeed. That is where the 50-50 rule comes in. So anything that deals with a D20 system, you basically just need to calculate where your 50-50 rule is. If you want your players to have a better chance, then you make it higher. Or sorry, lower. If you wanted to make it a harder chance, you make it higher. And so while mechanically this is a very sound thought, thematically it also helps you understand what you want the dice to say. So we want there to be a chance. And we need to, as the dungeon masters, figure out what kind of story we're telling. We can allow that 50-50 rule to help influence how hard things are, how easy things are, how heroic the characters are. Then there's the idea of scalability, meaning that as I move away from that target, how badly does someone succeed or how badly do they fail? Meaning, in what scale does it become increasingly good or increasingly bad? And I'm not just talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm talking about every TTRPG that runs a D20 system. The 50-50 rule works in all cases. You just need to know what that number is. Then you can adjust from there. I'm not saying this is a role playing mechanic. It's